December Licensing Subcommittee D meeting. My name is Gareth Sykes. I'm the Governance Officer for this meeting. I'm going to start the meeting by just very briefly going through the remote meeting protocol. I'll try and get through this swiftly as I can so we can get to the formal agenda. So the first point is that only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. You could either raise your hand on the screen, but there also is a raise hand function in Google Meet, and direct all communication through the committee chair, please. Will everyone please ensure that their mics are muted when they are not speaking, apart from the chair, who does not need to mute their mic. When speaking, please be succinct and do not exceed the allocated timeframes highlighted at the start of the hearing, which are contained in the procedure note. If you're referring to a specific page or picture, please refer to that specific page or picture in the report. If you're having any technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet. Please do not use the chat function to put any formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from this meeting. If there is more than one application, which in the case of this meeting there is, parties advised after each application is heard in turn. As set out in the agenda pack, the subcommittee will retire after the meeting. Applicants and all other parties will be asked to leave once the formal agenda items are finished. And that concludes the remote meeting protocol. And we'll go now to the formal agenda, beginning with the election of a chair. Councillors, please, if you could elect a chair.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Smith, please.
Great. Thank you very much indeed for that, and welcome everyone to Licensing Subcommittee D, Thursday the 1st of December at 2 o'clock. You can see, if you've got the pack online or a hard copy, a copy of the agenda is just on the inside page, just there. Yeah. So before we start, we'll just run around the virtual room just to introduce ourselves. My name is Councillor Smith. I'm a councillor in Stoke Newington Ward and also the chair of licensing. Zoe.
Hi everyone, Councillor Garbett in Dalston Ward.
And Councillor Susan Runge.
I'm councillor for Hackney Central Ward. Hello.
Fantastic. Amanda.
Good afternoon. I'm a solicitor. I'm supporting members this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chewett.
Good afternoon. I'm David Chewett. I'm team leader licensing and technical support. You can hear me?
You've frozen a bit for me.
I'm David Chewett. I'm team leader licensing and technical support.
Excellent. Okay, and Channing?
I'm Channing Riviere, Principal Licence Officer.
Fantastic. And you've heard from Gareth already. He's our support officer. Thank you, Gareth. And we've got Joseph here.
Hi, I'm Joseph Howe, the DPS and General Manager of the Haggerston.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joseph. And we have Andy.
Sir, I'm Andy Newman, licensing consultant and agent for the Haggerston.
Thank you very much. And then I'm presuming everyone's okay with me saying their name on this call. If you're not, tell me now. Okay. Neil.
Chair, just to, as mentioned earlier on, obviously Matt is joining us for the first item as the applicant's acoustics consultant. So
yeah, I'll get into that in a little bit. Okay. I've got Neil on the call. Can you introduce yourself, Neil? Thank you. Oh, yeah, Neil Humwick.
Yeah, it's Pete Humwick. I'm here for the second item of 10.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great. And then we have Matt. You're the acoustic consultant.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name is Matt Lazari. I'm from a company called Sound Licensing, and I'm the acoustic consultant who's been engaged by the applicant in this case.
Okay. Just on that point briefly, we haven't seen an acoustic report, so you're not speaking to a report which is actually not in the pack.
No, Chair. I did visit the site yesterday, so I have knowledge of what's going on at the moment. But obviously, at this late stage, I haven't been able to produce a report.
Yeah. Can I just bring in our lawyer just for a second, Amanda? I presume it's okay to hear from Matt as it's not represented in the documents?
Well, it would have been good for the applicant's agent to have notified us that this was going to be done, because they would have had the opportunity to do that. So I'm sure that he's now going to say something. So, but obviously, I don't think there's a major issue, because it's their supporting evidence in respect of their application.
Okay, I was just checking. Mr. Newman, just very briefly, come in.
Yeah, Matt was assigned or a contract very late in the day. That said, I did email Suba, who acknowledged the receipt. I've also forwarded that to Gareth. So it's in the second part of the email that Matt was going to appear here. That was confirmed with us.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's fair to hear from Matt, so that's fine as far as I'm concerned. Okay, let's move on with the last introduction, I believe, is Rhys Jordan.
I'm just an observer today.
An observer from where?
The Haggerston. Yeah.
Just for a point of clarification, Chair, I have Rhys down under the other persons.
Okay, is that Rhys J. Taylor?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, fantastic. I think we've done the introductions, so now we'll move back to the agenda. So, agenda item 1 is the election of chair. Andy?
Sorry, sir. I think it's rather important. I don't think it's been introduced. It's a bit camera shy, but Peter Clark, along with Joseph, is the director of the Haggerston.
Oh, right. I couldn't see Peter on my screen. I've just got Joseph there. Hi, Peter. Nice to see you. Sorry about that. I just could see one person on there. Okay, so moving on. Now we've done our introductions. I'm pleased that you guys are out there trying to help me. Brilliant. Channing.
Chair, I believe George Wakarach from Environmental Protection has also joined the meeting.
Okay, maybe George arrived a bit late. George, do you want to introduce yourself then? Hello, George. Are you there? George isn't there at the moment, so we'll move on until he comes back, but he is the Environmental Health Officer, just for your information. Right, so moving on, election of chair, agenda item 1 we've done. So agenda item 2 is apologies for absence. There have been no apologies received at the time of writing. Item agenda 3 is declarations of interest from members. Any declarations of interest?
No, none from me.
Fantastic, great. And then minutes of the previous meeting is agenda item 4, so there's no minutes for consideration today. And then item 5 is the hearing procedure, which I'll just run through very quickly. It moves in different steps. So step 1 is the appointment of the chair and introduction, which we've done. Step 2, the licensing officer will outline the report. Step 3, the applicant will present their case in support of their application. And step 4 is responsible authorities, in this case it will be environmental health. The police have withdrawn because you've agreed hours and you've looked at condition 24. And then there are other persons who may want to speak in support. All of these are 5 minutes, by the way. Step 6 then moves into a discussion for about around 15 minutes or so. Step 7 is closing remarks. Step 8, final clarification, any point of final clarification, and then we will ask those involved to leave, and we will then go on to consider the case. You should be able to phone up tomorrow to hear the result of this. Otherwise, you will receive written confirmation within 5 working days. So, any questions just at this point before we move straight into Gareth?
Just a point of clarification, Chair, just for the responsible authorities for the Haggerston pub licensing as well.
Licensing, yeah.
I've also made a submission. So,
yeah, thank you for that. I have them down in my notes. Don't worry. Okay, Mr. Newman. Yeah,
Thank
you're
you,
up.
Chair. Sorry. I did ask beforehand, it's a matter for you, sir, but I did ask for more than the 5 minutes as livelihoods are at stake here.
Okay, how much longer do you think you're going to need?
I'll be as brief as I can, maybe another 5, but I certainly don't intend to use 10 minutes up.
Okay, cool. Great. Mr. Chewett.
Thank you, Chair. I just received message from my colleague in the office that George is just struggling with technology a little bit, but he is looking for a computer that works properly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think now we're ready to move on to the step 2. So that would be, can I invite the licensing officer, please, to outline the report? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members are asked to consider an application to review. Apologies. Members are asked to consider an application to vary a premises license issued in respect of the Haggerston pub, which is at 438 Kingsland Road. The application, as you can see, is appended within today's report. And we do also have an additional submission, which is titled Points to Assist the Committee.
Yeah, I've got it.
We received representations from Environmental Protection, from the licensing authority, the police, which were withdrawn, and from a number of other persons. So those are the outstanding matters for discussion this afternoon. In terms of updates, I'm sure Mr. Newman will speak to this, but there are agreed hours and conditions with the police. The extension now is for live music, recorded music, and supply of alcohol on Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays, and to amend that condition 32. And there's some observations which I'm sure you'll get to also, is the revised condition 33 in relation to the backyard capacity.
Yeah.
And 26, condition 26 in relation to SIA. I'll leave that there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you for that. George, I believe you've managed to join the call. Do you just want to introduce yourself very briefly? He was there a minute ago. He's obviously having problems. Okay, let's move on then. So step 3 is I'd like to invite the applicant now, Mr. Newman, to present your case in support of the application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is that okay without Mr. Walker? Oh, is Mr. Walker back?
Hello.
George. Hi, George. You're back. Fantastic. Can you just introduce yourself, please, just very briefly?
My name is George. I'm the Environmental Protection Officer for the case.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Newman. George is on the call. Off you go.
Thank you, sir. We're all aware, I hope, about the hard-hit hospitality sector. We've had COVID issues with places being shut. There are pressures from the economy. We're told it's recession, and there are staff shortages as a result. Many well-known venues have had to shut their doors. The Haggerston cannot survive without the extra 2 hours applied for on Friday and Saturday, as agreed with the police, and the extra hour on Thursday, with 30 minutes as usual to close after those times. We've been working closely with the police who brought the review. This was agreed with the police. Now, should the Haggerston not get what they're asking for, I'm sorry, but livelihoods will be lost. Staff with dependents, their bills to pay during these difficult times, and others who rely on the Haggerston suppliers and all the like will suffer. Now, due to this review having been brought before, on the 18th of January was the hearing, and it was brought quite rightly. The Haggerston, under Director Peter Clark, a former teacher, it's an independent, have taken enormous positive steps. So we would say it would be fair to reward the investment in education, engagement and environment. Fair to reward the the aforementioned efforts by actively ensuring that the premises are run professionally with far higher standards than you would expect in an SME, small medium enterprise, independently run venue, and fair to reward the aforementioned efforts by the Haggerston, which would also demonstrate to other venues that if you've taken the appropriate action, you will be supported as necessary. For the Haggerston, this is desperately necessary. Please note, and this is particularly important, that there are no resident representations whatsoever against the Haggerston. For the review hearing, we had 101 expressions of support. That includes many residents and local people. We could have had many more, and there was one against the Haggerston. We've tried to keep the paperwork down this time. So we just have a few residents that supported us, but please note that they do, because we believe it's a given that we have overwhelming support. Now, I would like to read out a decision or part of a decision notice from the committee, which was in the points to assist in the pack, the last submission.
What page is that?
It's page 5, sir, on addendum item 6. Points to assist the committee.
Oh, yes. The supplementary.
Yeah.
Yep, I've got it.
I thank you.
I think members have got that too, yes. Members have got that. Yeah, you've had sight of that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just read out very quickly. The subcommittee recognised that the premises is a valuable community resource that needs to continue working for the benefit of the community. Now, in the hearing, we heard from many people from LGBT plus, Q plus, and many others diverse that they felt this was a safe place to go, their haven. It would be a travesty if this place was forced to shut and become, I don't know, expensive flats or what have you, given its iconic status. I'd also like to mention that to the committee that the granted Sunday hours, due to the iconic long-standing jazz night, a maturer crowd, was felt so important by the committee that they granted those extra hours. We're delighted to have Matt, the acoustician and noise expert, who for 16 years was the lead and principal noise officer for Hackney, who still comes to Hackney, and he's here to assist the committee. This is a momentous decision for the Haggerston. It's, as I say, it's an iconic venue. There can be no increase in the cumulative impact because the hours that they had before being taken to review were so much more, closing at 3:30 in the morning for many different licensing activities, including the musics and alcohol, plus some special dispensations as well, that it just is counterintuitive. It cannot possibly add to cumulative impact, and we would suggest respectfully that the that the LPs will follow accordingly. So that's the plea from the heart. They're financially strapped and they're desperate, and we've been working with other stakeholders, implementing all the positive things. I don't think you'll see premises now, independent premises with more policies, and they've professionalised the process. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Newman, that was great. That was 6.5 minutes.
I kept it brief, sir.
So thank you very much for that. That's good. So I just want to give the members the opportunity just to very briefly, if you've got anything brief that you want to talk about, because remember, we've got the discussion coming up. Zoe.
Thanks for that. That was really helpful. Just a point of clarity on some of the things you'd said. So you said, and noting in the additional information that we received, So in the additional information, and you said it in your introduction there, you said that there's been investments in raising standards. So I'd just like to know a bit about what that, just a few, maybe 2 or 3 examples of what that is. And then you also said education, engagement, and environment, which I think might relate to the same thing. But if you could just give us a few just examples of what that looks like, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Certainly, Councillor. So, dare I say, me, they've employed me as a licensing specialist and also expert to deliver training with other stakeholders, write policies. So that's part of the education piece. They've changed their SIA security team to what they consider to be a far better option, and that has worked. You know, that's the feedback. It's been far better and a far better relationship. I was going to say LJ, Mr. Howe, for example, and another manager were trained to become to have personal licenses. They've had wave training, so on and so forth. They attend all the pub watches, regular meetings with the police every quarter, I believe it is, at the very least. There are they reach out to residents if anybody has any issue to come and see them. We've got dispersal policy that they've used successfully. You'll notice it's the police that brought the review, and in fact it was Neil Hunwick who is here for the second item, who now is and Amanda, the acting sergeant, are very happy. We've had very constructive meetings, and so on. Is that enough, or have I forgotten anything?
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great. Councillor Sotarunga, any points of clarification at this point, bearing in mind we've got a discussion coming up?
No points of clarification at this point, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so let's move on then. Thank you, Mr. Newman, for that. So if I could invite the licensing team to come in at this point with your observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You can see my representation on page 36, Appendix B2. It relates primarily to the fact that the premise is located in the Dalston Special Policy Area. And we have noted that the previous license prior to the expedited review did have longer hours than they're seeking now. Our primary concern, though, comes to the amendment around the garden condition, where they're seeking to double the capacity and extend the use by 1 hour. So we would like to see if, you know, they would consider possibly reducing the amount of capacity, and have they got any mitigations to potential nuisance that might arise from the garden area. We are aware, like it's been noted, that, you know, the premises did have a later license than they're seeking now, but we do feel that because it's a special policy area, any amendments should give consideration to the residents nearby and how that amendment to the garden area might impact the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Danny, just very briefly, can you just elaborate a little bit on the garden? Just give us a little picture. Did that come up in the review?
I can't recall if it came up in the review, but as it stands now, it's limited to a capacity of 20.
Yeah.
With only 15 smokers after 10 o'clock. And what they're seeking to do is have a capacity of 40 with 15 smokers after 11 o'clock.
11, yeah. Okay. I mean, Miles, but we can dig a little bit deeper into this in the discussion phase. Okay, so thank you very much, Channing, for that. I would like to invite George now from the Environmental Health Protection Team. George, do you want to come in with your representation? George, are you there?
He might still be having problems with the
we've had
hardware.
Someone
joining.
joining.
Scenarios joined from my team. It's been Scenario who told me that George is having problems. So I think George might speak through Scenario's connection. Possibly that might be
Was
what's
that
happening.
him phoning in? Could he phone in, maybe?
Yeah, it's a possibility. Just let's see what happens here. George, we're trying to get hold of you. Are you coming in on Scenario's? Hello? George, we can't hear you though. We can't hear you, George. Hello?
George, you're on mute. You need to unmute your mic.
Hear
so
me
we can,
now?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Okay, George, off you go.
Yeah, sorry about the mess. My machines, I've tried 3, they are not working. Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. This is about the Haggerston. I've had 8 complaints from 3 different residents about loud music emanating from the premises and noise from people at the back, in the external area at the back. Correspondence has been ongoing between me and the management of the premises. They are aware of the problem, but the problem hasn't been adequately addressed. The latest email I got was last week from one of the residents saying the music is still a problem. And that is why I decided to object to the application. I've discussed it with Andy at large. The biggest problem I've got is the live music, especially. I told them I've got issues with that because recorded music can be controlled through the limiter, but live music is very difficult to control. The biggest problem that they've got is that the premises is not suitable to contain the music that they're producing. And I requested if they can do a proper acoustic assessment on the premises. And I said I would support them if they can do that, even if they don't have the money to do the works now. They can take an undertaking to say, you know what, there's a problem, but give us 3 or 4 months to do the works. But they have not been positive on that. And therefore my stand is if we increase the hours, we are causing more and more disturbance to the neighbors.
Okay. We will have a chance to talk about all this stuff in the discussion. Is that you finished, George?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much, George, for that. It's quite clear. And I think that's it for responsible authorities. Mr. Newman, do you want to come in briefly?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, but my memory is this, that I've been advised of 2 residents making complaints, for which I've asked for disclosure. I know George is exceptionally busy and has been sick, but I'm yet to receive that. So unless the venue know differently, I only know about 2 residents who have made complaints. I don't want to make a particular point about asking for adjournment or anything else because we're so desperate to get this hearing heard today for financial reasons, sir. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's just a point of clarification. Thank you for that. We can dig into this a bit more in the discussion phase. So we do have other persons here in support. Zoe, you've put your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, it was just a clarity on the complaints because the George, your submission said that there were some complaints in June and July. I just wondered if those 8 that you referred to were in that period, or also then you referred to one that was recent. So I just wondered if, like, when, if you could just tell us quickly when they were. Sorry, Councillor Smith, I hope that's okay. Just that bit of clarity, and then we can move to discussion.
Yeah, that's right. The complaints were in the summer period of this year. The issue we have is that there are 2 premises quite close to one another. when the complaints started coming, they were not sure which one. So there's a bit of confusion there, because when they call at night, they accuse one or the other. So it's very difficult to pinpoint, but the ones who have clearly stated that is the Haggerston in their complaints are 3.
Okay, and all of those took place in the summer, yeah?
Did I answer you well?
Yeah, all of those took place in the summer, yeah?
Yeah, in the summer. But last week, I had another complaint from one of the previous residents saying the music from the Haggerston is still a problem. So I tried to make arrangements to go and visit, but she was going out of London, so I couldn't do it last weekend.
Okay. Okay, great. Matt, I can see you there. I'm not calling you to speak now, but you will. I haven't forgotten about you. So you will get a chance to speak, so don't worry. I've got Mr. Taylor on the call from the other persons. Mr. Taylor, I don't know if you want to come in and speak in support of the venue. I know you said you were an observer. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think you're, as far as I'm aware, Gareth, Mr. Taylor is the only one from the other persons here. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair. I do not see any of the other persons listed here on my sheet at present.
So I'm an architectural assistant. I've basically lived in Hackney for 10 years, and I've kind of frequented the venue many times, and I think it's like an incredible venue for people like all around Hackney, and I'm in deep support of the Haggerston. I think it's it's a brilliant venue, and it basically, I think it needs to needs to have these extra opening hours to stay afloat pretty much, and yeah, I'm just in full support of the Haggerston.
Would you mind just telling us a little bit about, a typical evening out there, and particularly around the garden area?
Yeah, so it's just like a bunch of friends, a bunch of people that I've known there for over, as I say, over like 8 to 10 years. And so I feel at home there, and I always have done. And yeah, I think it's just a brilliant establishment.
And how does the garden operate for you?
I actually quit smoking a year ago, so I rarely go in there. And so.
Fair enough. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Taylor. I know you weren't expecting to speak, but that's great. Thank you for that. If you've got anything more to say, you're welcome to say it.
I'm currently at work at the minute, so just trying to.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks.
Okay, so now I think.
Sorry, Chair. Do you want to just briefly ask Mr. Taylor if he knows anything, or if he's experienced any issues about noise there, or does he, what's his experience about the noise in the premises?
Yeah. Did you hear that, Mr. Taylor?
Yeah. I haven't heard anything. No complaints, or people around me have never ever complained. No, none of the community or anyone around me haven't. Every time I've been there, there's been no trouble, and it's been a place that kind of is inclusive, and everyone's kind of just there to kind of enjoy the jazz on Sunday nights, and basically just have a good time and actually enjoy the culture that Hackney provides.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so now we can move on to the discussion phase, and this is the point where I would like to invite members to come in with any questions, observations that you've made so far. Councillor Susan Runge.
Thank you, Chair. Just as we're talking about the external gardening area, I thought I'd keep up the flow in respect of the garden area. I'd like to hear more information about that area, the external area, and how is it going to be managed, and also about the backyard capacity, because there seems to be quite a jump in numbers in respect of the backyard capacity. So we'd like to hear more about that, and also my understanding is that the before 11 o'clock, smokers and drinkers can be outside, and after 11, it's only the smokers. So we would definitely want to hear more about the backyard capacity, because it is close to flats which are above nearby commercial premises, and there is something about the noise in respect of another close venue. So if we could hear more about that and how it will be managed, that would be really good. Thank you.
Amanda.
Yes, Chair. I just wanted to quickly ask, I know you're going into discussion phase and he may be included in this, but I don't think Mr. Newman made any comments about, or I don't know if I missed anything about his the late noise report and the gentleman that's attending to confirm the outcome of that. So I don't know if you, or is that going to be part of the discussion phase? Sorry.
Yeah, that'll probably come in as part of the discussion. I would like to add a little bit to Councillor Suzurunga's question in terms of, this is kind of to George, really. George, when you say that the venue's not appropriate for live music from the point of view of sort of sound travel, is it the live music you're concerned about traveling into the garden where there's residents sort of living around that area? Is that the predominant problem there, George?
Thank you. There's also the recorded music outbreak, which the residents are complaining about. And obviously,
and when you say outbreak, is that out the back or out the front, or where is it?
I don't know where is the outbreak is happening, but I think the residents who are complaining is at the back, because at the front is just the road, and so is at the back of the premises. Obviously, as I said before, recorded music can be controlled through the use of the limiter, but the amplified music, there's no way you're going to control it.
Yeah.
So with the current recorded music outbreak, if we add live music going until late, that's gonna keep the residents up till whatever time. Now, going back to the other premises, what has happened recently is that the neighboring premises have done proper sound insulation works. So the noise that used to get out of the neighboring premises is not happening now. And that is why the noise from the Haggerston has become more predominant.
Yeah, okay, it's got a good picture. I can see Andy and I can see Matt and I can see Joseph, but I want to go back to Councillor Suzurunga's original question before Matt and Andy come in, because Joseph, you had your hand up in terms of how that area is managed. And I'm noting on page 51 of the report, condition 18, save for access to and egress from the premises, all windows and doors shall remain closed at all times when amplified music and other background music is being played. So if that's the case, we can talk to Matt about this later. You know, if they're all closed, and in theory, you know, that should prevent, you know, a proportion of that music going out the back. But anyway, Joseph, off you go.
Yeah, I can give a little detail on how the garden's managed as well. But in terms of the external doors, after receiving some advice from George in the summer, we added acoustic seals to all of the doors, all of the external doors. And also in terms of noise traveling into the garden from the main room, you can refer to the diagram of the premises on the penultimate page of that, our license. We have like a lobby area in between the main room and the back garden, where there's a very thick fire door, which Matt can probably tell you a little bit more about that area and acoustics about that, which means sound shouldn't travel through through the main bar into the garden area. And so I'm not sure how
Is that near the kitchen store area and the storage? Is that you're talking about that corridor there? Are you?
Yeah, there's a corridor from the main bar to the garden. So yeah.
Okay, so there's a door that goes into there,
and then there's another door, which is obviously the back garden door.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and then the DJ booth is just before the basically the front door to that bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's 2 doors, and it creates a lobby area. I mean, Matt can go.
Where does the band play? Where do you put the band?
At the front of the venue. So
the front, next to the door, is it, or
nearer to the front door? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they play only on Sundays, which is not a night that we're trying to vary anyway.
Yeah.
In terms of Councillor Suzarunja's question about how the garden is kind of managed, so we've got like a dedicated security member who is constantly in the garden from when they start at 8 o'clock, which is also when the music begins, and that's when recorded music begins at 8 o'clock. So yeah, we've got a dedicated security person who stays in the garden and ensures that people are being quiet and kind of requests that they're respectful of the neighbours. And then during when we had the 10s licenses, we were doing it till 11. But at the moment, obviously, we're doing it till 10. So at 10 o'clock, it's only smokers out there. And what that security team member does is ensures that after our customers finish their cigarettes, they're directed back inside. So it doesn't become a continuous social area for people to stay and have long-winded chats out there. Yeah.
Maybe you want to talk a little bit about the numbers, Joseph, because I think Councillor Suzarunja was mentioning that as well. The fact you want to double it from 20 to 40, and then get the extra hour as well. Can you just explain why you need that?
So what happens is inside the venue, when we're busy, there becomes a bit of congestion of people trying to go outside to have a cigarette, and it just causes very large queues for the garden.
But you're limited to 15 smokers anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. And so there are times during the night when more than 15 people kind of want to go out to have a cigarette.
I know, but you're limited to 15, Joseph.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're supposed to only have 15 out there smoking. That's the point.
Yeah, exactly. So we only have 15 out there, but there are times when more than that people want to go out for a cigarette.
Yeah, well, that's down to the management to control that. Mr. Newman, I can see you want to come in on this point. Just hold that in your head for a minute, as well as all the other stuff you want to talk about, until Joseph's finished. Off you go.
Yeah, of course, we manage that, and what I'm saying is it becomes a problem in that corridor, especially when we have other events upstairs, with a lot of congestion. And what we don't want is a lot of people trying to go outside when if we could let a few more people out there for a cigarette, then it means that then we'd have a little bit more breathing space in that area. And yeah, as I said, they're going out for a after 10, they're going out for a cigarette and coming back inside. They're not staying outside.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm kind of wondering, and George, just listen to this. I'm just wondering, because George has mentioned, recorded music and live music as kind of, sound emanating into the back area, which is the problem where the complaints are coming from. He hasn't mentioned anybody, talking out there as being a problem in his submission. I'm wondering, George, if part of the problem is basically people walking through that corridor and having to open doors to get out there, if that's part of the issue. And therefore, the more people that are traveling down that corridor into the garden, the more the door will be opened, and therefore the more sound spill there will be into the back garden. would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry if I didn't mention the loud conversations in the garden, but that is part of the complaint. They're complaining about people having loud conversations in the garden. What happens is, but before I say that, I need to know, I haven't been into the back garden. What is the surrounding like? Is it surrounded by buildings, or is it open? How is the garden surrounded by?
Yeah, just a description, Joseph, of what's out there.
There's a few tables and some chairs.
And what buildings surround it? What's on the perimeter?
There's a side wall of a neighboring venue, and then kind of over the kind of shelter area, it goes into the neighboring shop. I think it's Morris Levers, and there's some residential flats. Another house away.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
do you have any ideas where the complaints are coming from?
No, because we haven't been told about any complaints other than the ones in the summer. So
Right.
I'm
Okay.
not sure about where they're coming from.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay, Chair. I think the reason why I asked for that is, the way sound travels.
Yeah.
Once you're surrounded by hard surfaces, walls all around it, it becomes very vibrant.
Yeah.
Any small noise just reverberates, the energy going, the energy bouncing back, and that increases the noise levels by 3 decibels on the hard surface.
Yeah.
So what the residents are receiving is higher than the noise they're producing, and that is why I asked the question. So if we are putting people in the garden till 2 or 3 in the morning, we are actually increasing their exposure to noise at a sensitive time when they're supposed to be sleeping.
Yeah, but bear in mind, I think wasn't there a suggested limit? Yeah, just limited to smoking after 2300 hours, but that would involve chatting as well. Okay, Mr. Newman, you're desperate to come in. Matt, I'll take you after Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to get in before we hear the real noise discussion between the specialists. So, which way to go? Firstly, just to bear in mind that on the original license before the review hearing, people going out to the garden was unlimited apart from that condition. You make a very good point, sir, by the way, that we seem to have 2 counter conditions on the license. 2, I'd like to point out that because of the pinch point that Joseph mentioned, this application for longer hours was brought about by discussions with the police around how to best solve this, because we didn't want to have any issues between people. 3, I'd also respectfully make the point that as far as I know, I don't believe that from our last discussions, unless anything has happened since, and it sounds not, that George hasn't been to the Jago, he hasn't been to the Haggerston, and there are other places around. I'm sure experienced Matt can delve into noise issues very professionally, but I just thought I'd raise those points before we go into the detailed noise specialist start.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. George, just a point of clarification, the complaints that you've received are specifically about the Haggerston, because the Jago and the Haggerston are very close by. So I just want to make sure that that's the case. That you're absolutely positive this is about the Haggerston and not about the Jago.
Thank you, Chair. When the complaint started in May, some of the residents were mixing it up. But the ones that have brought forward are the ones who have mentioned Haggerston specifically. When we visited in May, The officers obviously didn't go inside the complainant's property, but according to the notes, they said the music from the Haggerston was really loud outside in the street, and that the complaint during that time was specifically about the Haggerston.
Okay.
The cases where they haven't mentioned Haggerston specifically, we've left it out.
Okay, great. Joseph, do you want to come back on that one? Matt, I can still see you. Don't worry. You'll get your chance.
Yeah, sorry. So the complaints that happened in the summer when me and George had a conversation on the phone. What happened was specifically a new security member had left the front door open. Right, and this is before me and George had any discussion, and I'd relayed that to the officers that came down that evening and apologized and said that obviously I had firm words with the security team that all external doors must be closed at all times. And since then, we've had no complaints, I don't think, about that, I'm guessing.
Okay, thank you. At this point, just before I bring Matt in again, I've noted that Councillor Susarunga, you've put your hand up. I just want to clarify that Councillor Garbett, have you got some questions you want to ask as well? You do. Okay, so I'm going to bring in, before Matt, sorry, just be patient, Matt, we'll get to you, don't worry. Councillor Susarunga, you've got your hand up. Would you like to come in?
Yeah, just very briefly, thank you to everybody who answered my specific questions on capacity and the management of the external yard. So, you know, I extrapolated those two aspects away from noise. So thank you when you answered in that respect. And just to remind everybody, have you noticed that George is actually sitting in a beautiful garden room?
It looks very nice. Councillor Garbett.
Thank you. Yeah, some of my questions I think are going to be picked up by Max. It was just to do with the noise levels and supplying the noise impact report that was mentioned in the pack. And then a couple of other questions that would just be good to get some clarity on. I know we've talked a bit about how you manage the venue in general, but I feel like there could have been a bit more detail. I think it's on page 34, just about how you manage people leaving the venue quietly. I know you said you've now got a dispersal policy, which was really good to hear. But there was another question on, oh, I've lost my question. Just around how you keep people safe. There didn't seem to be much information there. So I just wondered if you could maybe comment a bit on those 2 points. So yeah, mainly noise report, and then people leaving quietly in general, and then how you keep people safe. Thank you.
Okay, Joseph, safety and dispersal policy, please, and then we'll come to Matt on the noise report.
Hi, so we have a dispersal policy written by Andy that we put in place. We also have obviously dedicated SIA who put this into practice. That's when people are leaving the venue. And what we also do is we hire our SIA for an extra half an hour after the venue is closed to clear the whole street. And as in, I'm talking about past other venues. So they go out of their way, and we obviously take the cost of that to clear them much further down the street. You know, get them on their way on their onward journeys. And also, as you can see in, I think it's in Appendix C3, where a local resident mentions what I've just said, and also mentions that it's good to have extra security in the area with eyes on the street. And I think it actually increases the prevention of public nuisance by having the security there. And I think that's a really good way of keeping that area safe. And in terms of, what was the other question, sorry?
Well, you've kind of covered it really. So you've done safety and dispersal. It's sort of combined in a way.
It's about, yeah, keeping people safe. It's just to do a thorough job. I think you probably do more than you've put in the application just around keeping people safe, because we've heard from kind of the other persons about how positive they think the venue is. So it was just to give you an opportunity really to say ways that you make people feel safe or keep people safe in the venue.
Yeah, and so the supervisor on shift will personally oversee that dispersal as well, and most of the time it's me personally. And yeah, the security team don't leave until actually the street is being cleared.
Yeah. Okay. As we're kind of thinking about the noise and we're thinking about the numbers in the garden and all that kind of thing, Mr. Newman, I'd like to bring in Matt now, because Matt's been waiting patiently to come in. And I'd just like to say, Matt, having looked at the map, I mean, it seems like a relatively good setup in a way, that the band's at the front of the venue, and then you've got all those kind of blockages really apart from the corridor out into the back garden. You've got the storage rooms, you've got this and that might absorb some of that sound. Anyway, my idea would basically be to kind of soundproof that area before you get into those storage areas and the bathrooms and everything. Anyway, off you go, Matt. Thank you for being so patient.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a lot of notes, so I've just got to make sure I don't miss anything. Just for the committee's reference, most British standards consider adult sleeping hours to be between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So that's a clarification there. With regard to the rear garden, it is fully enclosed with walls, obviously not a roof because of smoking. And Mr. Wokarach is quite right about reverberant noise. But on the offset to that is more, it screens as well. There is a screening element to stop noise going to other premises as well. So that would be more effective, would give more of a reduction than the reverberant noise. I suppose from my perspective, looking at this, having done George's job in the past, is that there have been 8 complaints, but there is no details about the investigations. And as there seems to be some confusion, and having worked in that area for 13 years and dealt with the Jago as passing clouds as it was, they're so close that it would be very, very easy to attribute noise to the wrong premises. So my concern would be, if officers haven't had time to get out there, then the appropriate weight should be put on these 8 complaints, because you cannot be sure, even if someone is completely adamant that this is the premises, if you don't actually go and witness it, they could be mistaken, and it does happen more often than you think. So on there, so that was my comment on that. With regard to the garden, it does have a very effective lobby. It's very large, and so what I actually said to the applicants was that if the SIA controls the outside door correctly, that should take away a lot of the problems. Because if he makes sure that that inner door shuts before the outer door opens, then that should stop the noise path coming from the main bar.
Yeah, just to clarify, you're talking about the entrance into the corridor and the exit from it, yeah? That's what you're describing as. That's what you're describing as this.
It's a lobby,
acoustic lobby, but it's actually a corridor. It's not. I know what you mean. Yeah.
If the doors have got acoustic seals on, it effectively performs that task.
Yeah.
Although it's not been built to do the job, it does the job of an acoustic lobby.
Yeah.
My other question would be, Mr. Wokarach mentioned about sound insulation being carried out on other premises. And I do know from my own experience that people may promise to do that, but if it hasn't been inspected, then how do we know that that sound insulation has been carried out at other premises? So by saying it has to be the Haggerston, if you've not established that the other premises have done what they're meant to have done, you can't rule out that noise comes from the other premises. So please give the appropriate weight to that as well. I think on there, I've talked about the SIA on the doors. Just to give you just a quick overview of my visit, which basically would have been an inspection for a noise impact assessment. It does have some very good mitigation measures in place: 2 lobbies, front and back, 2 limiters, 1 for the first floor, 1 for the ground floor, acoustic seals on doors, door closers. There are minor tweaks that can, but then, there are minor improvements to every premises that you walk into. and I'm certainly going to be advising the applicant of improvements they can make. I'm a little concerned that the local authority, the environmental health, can make a judgment on whether the premises is suitable for recorded and live music without visiting. That to me seems counterintuitive. If they don't know what's in the premises, how can they say whether it's suitable or not? Certainly with recorded music, it can work because it's got the limiters. With live music, obviously, as Mr. Walker actually said, it's a different animal. It's harder to control. You can get limiters to control live music. They work differently from recorded. But obviously, until noise complaints, if nobody's been to investigate, how do we know if there is a problem, the extent of any problem, and where it's coming from? So
what I'd say there, Matt, is, you can't really put a noise limiter on a drum kit. Let's face it.
No, you can't. The live music limiters work on cutting electrical supply, so things like amps. So what happens is, if it goes over a certain level, it'll cut the ring main to the sockets, and you lose.
Yeah, all those amps would have all the amps, if they were playing through amps. Right? If they went direct into the desk, and obviously they're not going through an amp. But in most cases, people will use an amp to play through, right?
Yeah. So that's
so it doesn't really. It's really difficult to unless you go sort of DPI, whatever, direct into the desk. You can't really do it because the amps, and then you've got to turn the amp up to blend in with the drums.
Well, the drums are the only thing you can't control because they're not amplified. Anything that uses electricity can be controlled. It's by limiters. It's not a problem. But what I would say is, before you tackle a problem that hasn't been established. Now, obviously, there was loud music coming out on the officer's visit, but the applicant has explained that the SIA left a door open, and unfortunately that does happen, and they've retrained their SIAs, which is a good thing. But with regard to the premises isn't suitable, I would say that the premises is in a good state at the moment and can be improved.
Yeah. Great. George, do you want to come back on some of those points that Matt made?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matt. The first point I would like to say is that I have been in some of the premises, that was around May, June, to witness the noise. And there were two noise sources. The Haggerston was less intrusive than noise from the other premises, and therefore we took action. The work has been done, it's been tested, and we've been to court on Monday to resolve the issues with the other premises. So the work has been done and tested. Going back to visiting, I wanted to come to the committee to explain what I'd witnessed. Unfortunately, the person who was complaining wasn't available last weekend. So what I can say is we've done all we can. We communicate with the residents, and what they're telling us now is that they can still hear the music from the Haggerston.
Okay, thank you, George. Councillor Garbett.
Thanks. I lost connection for a minute, so hopefully you didn't cover this in the minute that you lost me, that I lost it, Matt. But I was interested in you mentioning the advising on some improvements. So just wondered if you could just let us know how significantly you think those changes, what significant difference do you think those changes will make? And if Haggerston, I know earlier there was I mentioned that if you could make kind of commitments to making those, and we can take that into account. So I didn't know if you wanted to clarify if that was happening.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, just let me remind myself of what I actually wrote down. Yeah, I think the improvements that I'm going to suggest to the applicants will make a difference. I don't think, obviously I've not seen the premises in operation at night time, so I don't know, I can't give any evidence as to what the current impact is. But I think if we carry out a phased approach, which is what I always recommend, and then it can be reassessed at a couple of stages to see how well they go. I think that the 5 or 6 recommendations I've got for the premises will improve the situation. I would say it's very hard. Obviously, I don't know if George had a lot of time to do his representation, but obviously I didn't know any of the information about him visiting. And I think it's a positive thing to say that the noise from the Haggerston was not considered as much of an issue as I think we're talking about the Jago. And I don't think at any point a statutory nuisance has been witnessed either. Otherwise, I would expect that to be in the representation. So that's a positive point. So audibility is a different thing from statutory nuisance, and you can't always make things inaudible, but they shouldn't be affecting the amenity of residents.
I'd like to just talk about the bigger picture just before I bring others in. I believe, Joseph, you mentioned that you have live music on a Sunday, which is the infamous jazz Sundays that you have there. Is the rest of the time predominantly recorded music then?
Yeah, the rest of the time is predominantly recorded music.
Okay, so all of that time, so the six evenings of the rest of the week essentially can go through a limiter. So in theory, there shouldn't be a problem, which leads me on to George. Do you know what days were involved in regards to those complaints? Was it mainly the Sunday? The live music, was it mainly the live music that people were complaining about, or was it also the recorded music?
Thank you, Chair. I think it was more of the recorded music, if I can remember. One complaint was on a Sunday, but the majority mostly Friday, Saturday evenings.
Right. So we need reassurance then, Joseph, that this recorded stuff will be put through the limiter. Channing, I'd like to bring you in now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question was just in relation to, the garden area. If I could ask through the Chair if the applicant would be prepared to consider reducing the capacity sort as one, or if maybe some additional mitigations such as a staff member check-in every half an hour to monitor the noise levels. I understand you have a SIA now, or one SIA to look after 20 people outside. If you have 40 people, are you going to get 2 SIA, or are you going to have a staff member go out there and check maybe every half an hour and record the check just to make sure the noise of the voices outside doesn't become a problem for residents? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, just hold that thought, Joseph, and I'll bring in Mr. Newham now.
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of things to cover briefly.
Remember, you do have closing remarks as well.
I know, but this is important, I feel. So on the crime and disorder point, I just want to very quickly go into that. That's not one of the representations against this proposal. Variation. The police are happy, they're recognising law, and perhaps I should have expanded on how much more that they do to make people safe. So I'll take that as my responsibility, and I should have explained that better, trying to be brief. Now, I do have concern, given that with over 35 years of being involved one way or another with licensed premises, I think people know that the effects of COVID when places were shut, number one, made people more sensitive to noise. Number two, given what's at stake here for the Haggerston, survival or not, it does concern me that comments like, I think it was, if I can remember, it was on these days and not those days, blah, blah, blah. I think George said that he has visited the premises, but I didn't quite hear the answer to that, and I wasn't sure that it visited the premises, the Jago, although there are other premises, since they've had their noise impact assessment, which is expensive, and the Haggerston don't have money at the moment. I think also, sadly, it has been the case that at times people make assumptions, and occasionally they attribute noise to one premises when it could be another. I heard it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, but that's not what's being applied for here, for example. But I think we need to be very careful and go with clear evidence or concrete stuff that's been shared on making such an important decision here. And there are other licensed premises as well. And I just bring back my earlier point that no resident has made any representations about this application. And I've just forgotten my last point, but there we go, before we come to the rest of it. But I think I've spoken with Matt before, and he feels that the noise is managed well. Oh yeah, I don't recall seeing any environmental health representations against any of the 10s. I'd just like this to come back a little bit to firmer evidence, and because this hearing's on the balance of probability, but it's very easy to jump to conclusions, and at times wrong conclusions. Oh yeah, when that door was left open by a young new member of the SIA, Amit, I'm reminded of the team, that they came, the security team came as part of an award-winning Prince of Peckham security team, and they had caused no problems. And actually, when that one member of staff who was given words of advice and doesn't work there anymore made an error, who hasn't made an error in their lives, Joseph, among others, I know, goes and double checks. There was no need before because their management were doing it, but this was words of advice, he's left, and that surely won't happen again with all the checks and balances in place. But there we are. Back to you, Chair. I'll come back to Channing's point later.
Yes, thank you, George.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to make one comment to say, every time I receive a complaint, I send the email to the manager of the premises. So he's got all the records. I'm not just making up things. That is what I wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Susan Runge.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just want to add to what's been said recently, and just to assure you that when we are listening carefully to everybody, and that when we come to a decision, it will be based on the fact of the information you provided, what you've said here today, the fact that you're in a special policy area, and 6 licensing objectives related to being in a special policy area will be carefully considered. So I wanted just to give you that assurance. Hopefully you are assured.
Okay, Councillor Garbutt, do you have any further questions? Because the discussion now, we've been going on for 36 minutes. Okay, Matt, I'm going to bring you in, and then we can kind of, I'll do a little bit of a, not a summary, but there's a few little extra points on conditions that I just want to raise before we move into the closing remarks. Matt.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Just one very quick one. About the control of recorded music. There are 2 functioning limiters in the premises. I'm not aware of when they were last calibrated or set, so they can be recalibrated and set, and to ensure that there's no noise breakout that affects residential. So
yeah,
that's something can be done. Okay.
That's great. I mean, that would make sense to me. I just wanted to ask Joseph, and I don't want, you don't have to get into this in a big way. I just want to find out what the relationship with the Haggerston and the Jago's like. Are you kind of on talking terms? You know, do you talk to each other about, because you're so close that, as I say, it could, you know, there could be a bit of confusion around what's going on there. Just briefly, you don't have to get into it too much.
Yeah, I've got a very good relationship with the Jago. We talk probably about 4 or 5 times a week.
Okay, cool. Great. That's great to know. So just on more sort of technical points, you haven't yet answered Channing's question about the capacity, so just keep that one in your mind for a minute, about whether you'd be willing to stay with what you've got, which is 20, rather than move to 40, which is condition 32. Regards to condition 31, in terms of the dispersal policy, I just want to make sure that it's been approved by the police and the licensing authority. Is that the case? Yes, brilliant. And then on condition 33, the fire risk assessment for capacity, has that been looked at? So, Mr. Newman, it's condition number 33. The licensing holder shall submit an up-to-date fire risk assessment to be deemed acceptable by the police and the licensing authority. It says the premises shall not exceed 250, subject to the following occupancies, which is 70 on the first floor and 180 people on the ground floor. Has that fire risk assessment been submitted, and has it been approved by the police and the licensing authority? Do you know?
Yes, sir. I believe all this was done some time ago, as were the policies. Everything was in place.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. So now we need to basically get back to the garden, get back to the capacity, and just talk about that a little bit as to where you're at with that, Joseph. You were asked the question, there were two elements to it, the numbers or the control in terms of SIAs. So if you could just come back just to give us a feel for where you are with that.
Yeah, we're very happy to do written checks of the garden from the supervisor, checking on the SIA that's out there. I do think that it's quite a small space. I think one SIA is enough to ensure up to 40 people are being respectful. Yeah, I think that's my point.
And from our point of view, well, from my point of view, obviously the condition of 20 was put in there for a reason, and I don't want this to scupper your application necessarily. I just want to know if you're willing to move at all on the numbers there.
Well, we did our 10s for 13 weeks in a row, which were approved by police licensing for those numbers. And I think, having the SIA in the garden worked very well and effectively for those numbers. I'm not sure, I personally haven't received any complaints about numbers, about voices in the garden. And yeah, I think they did a really good job of having it under control. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've got the picture, but you didn't answer the question.
What was it?
Would you consider going down in numbers?
Going down further down than 20?
No, 40. You're asking for 40, right?
If there's a negotiation to be had, I think, as I said before,
that could be a sticking point for members. That's all I'm saying. Could be a sticking point. I'm just giving the opportunity because I don't want this to scupper your aspirations.
Yeah, there's definitely a negotiation to be had. I mean, a minimum of 30, just because, as I said before, we don't want to keep creating congestion inside the venue, and that was one of the reasons why we rose it in the first place.
I know, but it potentially could lead to issues with noise and stuff like that. Anyway, so we've got the picture, Joseph. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Newman.
Sir, thank you. Two things. I'd like to have a word with my client for a couple of minutes, if you wouldn't mind. So I'd like to give some advice on the garden. And whilst I have the floor, I'd just like to mention, just the earlier point, I'm often here. I've worked in Hackney. I'm a big fan of Hackney. What I've said is in no way to criticise Hackney, who I know very well make fair decisions. So so take that as an apology, if you like. And just speaking of answers to questions, I don't think we actually got an answer to my question as to whether George has visited the Jago since their noise impact assessment. But by the way, thank you.
Yeah, I think George, you did mention that, didn't you?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I've got an acoustic report which has been sent to us. Everything has been tested according to the acoustic report. I've contacted the complainants time and again to see if there's still a problem. And as I said last week, I got the residents wrote to me to say they can't hear any noise from the Jago anymore, but they can still hear from noise from the Haggerston. Now, there's also an issue of, I don't know who is threatening the residents, and I've told them to report it to police. The residents are saying people have been knocking on their doors and harassing them. Have you made a noise complaint? Have you made a noise complaint? So the reason why they haven't objected, I don't think they want to be involved in any of this being identified, because I encourage them to object if they feel they should. But all of them are now telling me we've been threatened, people knocking on our doors. So we got the acoustic report about the Jago.
Yeah, have you? I think Mr. Newman's question was, have you actually visited the venue?
I visited before the works have been done. I haven't visited after the works.
Yeah, it might be useful to do that at some stage, George, maybe. So I've got Mr. Newman. Do you want to come back and then Councillor Garbutt?
I can.
Go ahead.
What I was saying is, thank you, Chair. I will make arrangements to visit.
Brilliant. Mr. Newman.
Yeah, Chair, I'm very sorry, but I'm now just hearing that people are knocking on people's doors.
As are we.
As are you. I've heard nothing about this before. I don't know if police have been consulted, the police that we're working with. I know nothing about this whatsoever, and I'm presuming neither do my clients. This is, and then to jump to the conclusion that nobody has made any representation against the Haggerston's variation. I'm dumbfounded. I must protest about that, sir. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's noted. Thank you. Councillor Garbutt.
Yeah, just a point of clarity on the numbers. I think you mentioned that the numbers in the garden were increased for the 10s. I just wanted to confirm how many the number was and how many the smokers were, if you know what I mean. Like how many number of people and then number of smokers after 10 or 11 that you had for the 10s. That would be really helpful. Yeah, and just wondered if people are able to make anonymous representations during this process. Is that part of the process? Maybe Amanda, that's a question for you. Just a quick question.
In terms of anonymous, I don't think they can do anonymous. If you're making a representation, it will be as another person.
Okay, you have to be identified.
When it's published in the agenda, though, we don't disclose the names for data protection reasons. So that's always redacted out. So you'll always see blacked out names. You won't actually see the names, but you'll see what the details of the representation is, because it's not fair on them to have their name published, except unless that's something that they really want. But we generally don't put people's names, and they shouldn't be making an anonymous thing, because they need to also, the applicant needs to be fair to them. They have to have the opportunity to make representations to that person, or to have something sent through the licensing authority to try and address the issues, if possible. Thank you.
Newman.
Sorry, sir. I feel we're going a bit off piste here, but there is nothing to stop any resident from contacting, I don't know, their local councillor, for example. Is there, and use them as a conduit if there was such a problem, to raise issues whereby they could keep their anonymity. I think a lot is coming across without being substantiated. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean,
I
Joseph,
did speak to my clients as well. Sorry about that. Outside.
oh yeah. Okay. So do you want to go off and speak to them then? Would you give you a couple of minutes?
Thanks, sir.
So if everyone could just be patient for a minute and just think about your closing remarks before we come back.
Do we have like a 5-minute break?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do
Little
that, and then that gives them a chance.
Joseph, you want to come
Also,
in? Yeah.
people can go non-visual. You know, they don't have to leave the meeting. They can go non-visual and turn their mute. Mute. Okay.
Yeah. Joseph, can't hear you. You're on mute still.
Sorry about that. Just to answer Councillor Garbutt's question, during the 13 weeks of 10s, we were doing 40 in the garden until 11 p.m. and then after 11 p.m. we were back to doing 15 smokers.
Yeah.
Sorry. 15
Yeah. Okay, so let's have a little comfort break for 5 minutes then, folks, and you can turn your cameras off, and we'll see you in 5. I'll set the clock.
On that note, could I ask the ICT officer, Mario, I presume is there like a temporary screen that goes up on YouTube, I understand?
Yeah, the display. Welcome back, everyone. Oh, it gets dark quick these days, doesn't it?
Yes, it's very, very foggy where I am.
Okay, Mr. Newman, what's the result?
The result of this, sir, is whilst there's been some allegations and so forth. I don't know if they've even been repeated. Oh, that's right. Let me deal with this first. The result of the conversation about the garden.
Yeah.
My advice is this: despite the largely positive history of the Tens, maybe one blip and some stuff we haven't heard before, my advice has been to throw yourself on the committee's mercy as far as the garden is concerned, because what is vital for the premises to survive, people to keep their jobs and so forth, is that is the hours. So my advice has been to give up the garden unless the committee are so minded to make Solomon's decision in any way they could to help the applicant. But the advice which has been taken is that the hours are far more important. So we've listened to what's been said. We certainly wouldn't be looking for 40, and if need be, would take the 20 that we had before. Does that help?
Okay,
sir?
well that's very helpful. Thank you for that. Did I see anybody with their hand up there? Can we move into closing remarks? Mr. Newman.
Yeah, before we do, I'd just like to ask George, if I may, given the seriousness of the allegation that's just been put forward about people being put in fear, potentially, I think, of making representations. George, have you brought this up with the police at all, or councillors or anything? It's the first we've heard of it. Thank you.
Mr. Newman, I'm not sure if George has rejoined the meeting after the break.
George, are you there? He seems to be still offline, I'm afraid. Apologies for that. George, are you there? I don't think George was making allegations towards the Haggerston at all. I don't think he mentioned a particular venue.
Chair.
Mr.
Hello,
Jewett.
Chair. Yeah, sorry if you could just hear me. Sonaria's just messaged me to say George has left the office. He had to leave the office, so he's no longer in this call.
Okay. Nothing we can do about that, really. I think we need to, Amanda, just a little bit of advice on this particular point from Mr. Newman. I'd like to move to closing remarks, but can we maybe note something around this?
Well, to be fair to Mr. Newman and his client, this is just a new allegation that's been raised, which they weren't aware of previously. So members can only attach a limited amount of weight to that information, because we don't have the full details. He's made that comment, but unless we have supporting information, it's not fair to hold the applicant account to that.
No. Just to give you reassurance, Joseph, we won't be thinking about that at all.
I mean, it's been said, but we can't do anything about it. I'm sorry about that, but obviously members will be looking more to attach weight to the comments for representations that were made in advance of the hearing, and to ensure that you've got enough information to make a decision, and that you're satisfied that the conditions, etc., have been addressed. And obviously the capacity point has been helpful with the garden.
Yeah, Mr. Newman, that's not going to come into our deliberations, by the way, just for reassurance purposes.
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to move to closing remarks now, because we've tried to give a fair hearing to this, and we've gone beyond the 15 minutes by a long way. So if I could just have closing remarks, please, from, well, start with Channing.
Thank you, Chair. Listen to all that's been discussed in the meeting. The licensing authority welcomes a suggestion from the applicant that they'd be happy to have the capacity and hours of the garden remain as it is. If the committee is minded to grant the additional hour with additional capacity, we'd ask that the mitigations discussed earlier regarding staff members checking every half an hour per se on the levels be taken into consideration. And also, given the discussion that's taken place between the Environmental Protection Officer and the applicant and their acoustic agent, if you like, George alluded to some acoustic report being provided within a 3 or 4 month span. So for all intents and purposes, it does appear that the applicant has hired an acoustic consultant to carry out that type of report. So the committee should probably consider adding a condition that that report be submitted to the Environmental Protection Officer within a 3 or 4 month span. And that should go some way to mitigate the potential concerns they have about the risks to the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective, Chair.
Yeah, brilliant. Just if we go down to 20, but we extend to 11, does that sit okay with you, Channing, the licensing team?
Chair, I think that would still be reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. That's good to hear. So I think I'd like to bring in then Mr. Newman for closing remarks, please. I mean, maybe your client would want to come back with a couple of minutes as well, possibly. I'm happy to do that. Joseph, if you want to let Mr. Newman go first, and then if you want to come in, you can if you want. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Chair. With respect, I'd rather bring in Matt.
Okay.
Given his noise expertise, and thank you, Channing, for steering this appropriately. I think from what we've heard, this is make or break for an iconic place. I think what the client has offered in terms of the back garden will go a long way to assuage any concerns. Matt and I are just going way beyond to help the client because we believe in the Haggerston and want to see this safe space for so many survive. I think Matt going down there and doing what he does is going to go some way to alleviate any concerns. And you know, we respectfully suggest that or require, you know, the Haggerston is a privately owned place by an ex-teacher who his business partner sadly passed away, which caused the problems before. We've been working so hard, and I would just respectfully suggest that they are given a chance, especially given the weight of what has been put before you today, sir. If I could bring in Matt.
Brilliant. Okay, Matt, a couple of minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, could I just clarify your comment about just a second before Andy came in? Was that about capacity of the garden?
Yeah.
With regard to reducing it from 20 downwards?
No, reducing it from the expected 40 back the same as it was before.
Right. Okay. No, that's
just
fine.
With the extended hour though, because before it was until 10. Yeah, now it's 11.
I misheard it. I do apologise. I had a palpitation there. All I would say is that I think the committee should note that obviously it's very powerful that no residents have put any representations in against this. I think that's a very good indicator of what's happening. 2, the fact that there hasn't been any statutory noise nuisance witnessed at the premises. 3, that the alleged noise nuisance can't totally be attributed to one premises or the other, and that needs further investigation. And the fact that I've been to the premises and there is already a good standard of mitigation with regard to a lot of traditional pubs, there are improvements that can be made, and the noise impact assessment will provide those.
Just wanted to clarify, Mr. Newman, in terms of what Channing was suggesting about the acoustic report. Can we put that in as a condition submitted to the Environmental Protection Team at some point in the future?
I'll be guided by Matt, because I'm not sure whether he's doing a half-step approach or a noise impact report, which would please.
Yeah, Matt, go on.
Yeah, effectively, my visit yesterday is the first half of a noise impact report. So I basically inspected the whole premises. And obviously, with the financial restrictions on the premises as they are, I can give them the recommendations without writing a whole report.
Yeah, well, I think that would suffice, wouldn't it, Channing?
So I can give a list of recommendations and my reasoning for those recommendations without going through the whole rigmarole of you know, every single thing.
Channing, do you want to come back on that briefly?
Chair, I mean, the report was primarily suggested by Environmental Protection, but unfortunately they're not here.
Yeah.
To protect the prevention of public nuisance license objective.
Yeah. Yeah.
If those documents could be submitted to Environmental Protection to their satisfaction, then we believe that would go some way in mitigating the risk.
Yeah.
To the objective.
Very well said. Thank you very much, Channing. Amanda.
Yes, Chair. I think that if we put in a condition saying it needs to be submitted in 3 to 4 months' time, and the parties can decide, you know, they can liaise with George or whoever at the Environmental Protection Team as to what report they want, and if needed, they'll have to change it to the full report if he is not happy with what's being proposed, and also to agree a date. But if you can ascertain, Chair, whether they need 3 or 4 months to do the whatever they need to do.
Matt, how long would you need for this?
Effectively, Chair, it could be done within a matter of a couple of weeks. I think it's more down to the financial implications for the premises.
Okay.
Chair, I think we should give the maximum time in case of financial difficulty. So we could give 3 months or 4 months. So if they can choose which they prefer, 3 or 4 months.
Well, let's go for 3, eh? Is that good?
Sir, can I ask the client?
Yeah, please.
He knows the finances. Peter.
Well, if it's a choice between 3 or 4 months, 4 months would be easier for us.
Okay, 4 months it is then.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Right. Where were we? Closing remarks. Mr. Newman's gone, Matt's gone, Channing's gone. I think we've heard from everyone. George is not here. Joseph, do you want to come in just for a couple of minutes, or Peter? I'm quite happy to hear from you for a minute or two.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for hearing our claim. Obviously, obviously the pub is a very special place for me. I've worked here for 7 years. It's a very special place for a lot of the community. The jazz band has been playing here for 20 years, even before it was Haggerston, and it's the same jazz band. And we also have a lot of like grassroots musicians come through. Andy's already mentioned how much of an iconic venue it is. And yeah, there's lots of other things we do here. We do charity events, we do short film premieres, artist gallery shows. It's a safe community asset in my opinion, and we just want to be able to continue to survive. And I think, you know, earning a little bit more would mean we do more than survive. We'd be able to thrive and become even more of an asset to Hackney. And that's it. Really.
Well, thank you. I mean, all those community initiatives will be noted by the members. We all know it's fairly straightforward, really. Get the limiter working for your recorded music. Yeah. You know, keep the doors closed, manage the people in the garden, and just get those complaints down. That's what we'd ask you to do going forward. But look, any point of clarification from members before we do this? Everyone happy? Great.
Yeah, just to say thank you everyone for their time. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Suzarunga.
Yes, just to say thank you to everybody, and also I want to commend you on the fact that you're part of the Hackney Nights scheme, and that I believe you have a women and diversity champion. So I would definitely like you to be commended on that, and to assure you that my assurances were not criticism, they were assurances.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, the Hackney Knives portal is fantastic, and they do offer some amazing free training. So highly recommended. And the accreditation scheme, if the license does go ahead, it'd be good to join that as well. Think about joining that. Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for being patient. It's been a long kind of debate, and I know Mr. Stewart might be thinking it's a bit too long, but we have given everyone a fair hearing, so I hope everyone's happy with that. So yeah, thank you. If all those taking part in this particular item on the agenda could leave now, then we can move on to the next one. Thank you very much indeed, everyone.
Right, goodbye.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
everyone. Thank you.
Okay,
Chair,
so sorry about
Chair,
that, folks. That was a rather long debate, but there we go.
Chair, just before we proceed, obviously, I think it's quite apparent to everybody that we still have not heard from the premises license holder. They obviously not joined the meeting. I'm not sure if David has heard anything at all.
I've not heard anything different. Just checking my messages, and I've not seen anything.
Just to re-clarify, the premises license holder was sent the meeting details for this meeting, plus a link to the meeting papers. The premises license holder was sent the meeting details, I believe, twice. So,
Now, should we check with the officer whether or not he's contacted the premises user today or heard anything from him, because that's important as well to make sure we've given him a chance to attend.
The last, I personally haven't, but
No, I was thinking of Miss PC Humwick.
oh, sorry.
If he could check if he's.
No, I've literally just closed my laptop. I've had nothing from him. He did mention at Pub Watch last week that he was having trouble getting tens, but yeah, he didn't state that he was or wasn't going to attend.
Are you able to call him at all? Are you able to telephone him, or David? Are you able to telephone
well, I'd be telephoning the premises user.
Yeah, just to check that we know whether or not they know, or they had problems, or
yeah,
or if they want to phone in if they're having IT problems.
So the update I had from Suba just before she had to take the afternoon off was that she couldn't get hold of that person.
Okay,
that's the same update that I had. So, but as I mentioned before, they have received the joining details.
Is it worth phoning at all, or not, or don't bother?
I wouldn't be able to do that myself because I don't have their contact details. That would be with licensing.
Yeah, on the form we've got the manager of the Broadway. It was going to be one of the participants. Is that who we're talking about?
Yeah, so the person who gave the 10, which is Cleo Creed, isn't it?
Mr. Creed.
Well, I mean, if you come across a number, it might be worth phoning them. You know, just because then you can say we've done that as well. We've gone to great lengths.
If you want to adjourn very briefly, I could do that.
We can do no more than that. Fantastic. Neil, I mean, I don't need to run through the hearing procedure and stuff for you, do I, really? I mean, you know all about it, so we can just move straight ahead. Maybe the licensing officers to outline the case briefly then. Outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is members are asked to consider whether or not to issue a counter notice in respect of a temporary event notice given for an event which is from 4 p.m. on the 8th of December to 1 a.m. on the 9th of December 2022. The premises is off Broadway, 63 to 65 Broadway Market. We received an objection from the police, and that's it. That's all there is to consider. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And PC Hunwick, off you go.
Right, well, I've not got a lot to add, so I'll keep this brief as to what I've actually put in my written objections. The venue, right through COVID and then beyond COVID, repeatedly caused problems, antisocial behaviour, etc. It breached its licensing conditions and operated in such a manner as to generate numerous complaints from local residents. That was to such an extent that the premises licence was reviewed at the request of the licensing authority, and it was revoked at subcommittee in March of this year. Obviously, I've enclosed a copy of the decision letter that was given. We as police cannot be satisfied, therefore, that the licensing objectives will not be undermined by the hours of the venue further being extended by the temporary event notice. The venue is currently trading under an appeal of the revocation, and now seeks to extend its hours for its anniversary event. As I would say, by the absence of a representative of the venue, would probably give you some sort of idea of their thinkings on our procedures. There were 71 pages of evidence submitted to the committee, mostly by way of resident complaints and statements from residents. And basically on that basis, we object to the temporary event notice.
Thank you very much, PC Hunwick. Can I just ask how it's been going? I mean, because obviously you must be keeping an eye on this place.
Well, to be honest, they've been keeping their heads down, but unfortunately, I would argue that we've had an awful lot of engagement with the venue prior to the review application being put in for the council. Both the council sent numerous warning letters. We met with the venue when it first started to become a problem, and we were ignored at every stage. Both the council and ourselves were ignored at every stage, and it took the revocation for them to actually do anything about the problems they were causing. So obviously, pending that appeal being heard, they have kept their heads down. We haven't received any direct complaints. I'm not aware of the council receiving any either. But as I say, they've not put any temporary event notice in either, and this is the first one. And I just think it would undermine the previous decision.
Yeah.
If it were our appeal, if we were to be supporting extensions to ours.
Yeah. I'd like to invite members now to come in with any questions for PC Hunwick. Councillor Suzarunga.
Thank you. I mean, I probably know the answer from what you said, but has there been any evidence at all of any kind of community engagement between them and the community? If that is the case, that would be a little helpful, but I'm not sure if you would know that, or if there would be someone else within your team that might know that, because that would be a little positive thing.
Yeah, I doubt very much there's been any. The weight of feeling from the local residents became so strong because of the problems that were continuing being held that I doubt they'd even dare trying to engage with the local residents for fear of what they hear off of them.
Yeah. So, Councillor Hunwick, I mean, it's about confidence for you, isn't it? You just don't have any confidence, really.
No, that is the point. As I say, it took revocation of the licence for them to listen. Well, I say to listen, just to keep their head down.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Garbutt, any questions or points of clarification you'd like to make?
No, I was going to raise a similar one to it's just being raised in terms of talking to residents and community. I think that was a the only thing that I thought was outstanding.
Yeah, and PC Homick, thank you for including the decision, because I think it was very useful for us to read that. Because I mean, there's a lot of things in there that really are not very palatable, to be honest with you. 5, 8, and 10, I've had big red circles around, and I just note that residents told the subcommittee they were exhausted with the license holder failing to comply with the conditions on their license. I mean, exhausted that's fairly strong language. I mean, if members have no more questions, I think we've got the idea, we've got the picture. PC Homick, have you got any closing remarks you'd like to make or whatever?
No, I think everything's in the paperwork that's been submitted. We have no confidence that it will run smoothly.
Yeah, and just like to invite Mr. Tuart just for closing remarks. Mr. Tuart, if you want.
I shouldn't, Chair, because it's a temporary event notice, but I think you're...
Okay, and Amanda, you had your hand up.
Yes, I was only going to ask, just for clarification, just whether or not the licensing authority had received any complaints as well. This is largely a temporary event notice.
Yeah, that's a good question. Did you hear that one, Mr. Tuart?
About the temporary event notice or generally?
Generally.
Since
the decision, since the
from memory, all I can recall is complaints about the premises still being in operation. So there was some confusion, I guess, from local residents who saw that it was still able to operate after the revocation.
Yeah.
But I don't recall seeing anything other than those complaints that came to my attention.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, folks, I think we can nothing more to discuss here. So PC Homick, you have to be said, thank you very much for your patience. I don't know what you were doing during the last one. I hope you managed to do some other work.
Well, I was listening in, to be fair. I was on the laptop because I did the review hearing for the Haggerston when they had their hours clipped. So
yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for your patience.
No, thanks, Chair. Councillors.
Okay.
Thank you. So that, I would imagine, Chair, formally ends this licensing subcommittee meeting.
Yep, thank you.
So we can cease recording and the live stream, and